All right, we're going to get started. This session is entitled 22 Relational Nutrients, the Fuel to Thrive. My name is Naomi Stolman, and I'm a graduate of the Townsend Institute from Concordia University, Irvine. So I learned from the master, and the 22 relational nutrients are from his latest book entitled People Fuel. Highly encourage you to buy the book. There's also an assessment called the TPRAT, which stands for Townsend's Personal and Relational Assessment Tool. And as a certified coach, graduate of the Townsend Institute, I have the ability to debrief that assessment. And if you would like to do that, all of you are welcome to receive a complimentary coaching session. Just reach out to me. I have business cards out in front, or I will have my contact information on the last screen. Some logistical things. We want to make sure that this is a safe and respectful environment. That's what's going to take to learn. And we also want to be mindful that when we're doing any kinds of discussion or role-playing activities, to refrain from something highly emotional or highly vulnerable. We're just going to kind of take low-risk kind of topics for now. And some of you may know each other, and some of you may not. But we're going to practice. It's going to feel awkward and kind of scripted at first. But with anything, former athletic coach, it takes reps. So I hope that this will be very beneficial for you and your relationships and with your teams and just building a strong culture. We will have different activities, and I will give you directions first. So pause before we get started so you get all the information, and then I'll release you for the activity. And one last thing, we're going to kick this off with quadrant 2, which is convey the good. And this is a space leaders don't spend a lot of time in. And it's the relational nutrient of celebration. Sometimes we're like, yay, we accomplished that, and let's move on to the next. So we're going to raise the energy in this room, and I don't care if other people here, make them curious, wonder what this is all about. And you've already been prepped last night if you were at the worship service. God is good, and some of us replied all the time, even though we weren't asked. So I'm going to lead it, you're going to echo, and we're going to say it with gusto, like we're cheering for our favorite team, whether or not they were in the Super Bowl. So, God is good.
All the time.
Ooh. That was good. You must have had caffeine already, but love the energy level. These are our objectives for our time today. I invite you to consider a different perspective when it comes to building strong relationships and a strong team culture. Because usually what happens when there's conflict and people are overwhelmed and stressed and not being at their best, usually there is an unmet need under those emotions, conflict in values, or we're just not connected. We're not finding common ground. So the 22 relational nutrients provides an opportunity to have shared vocabulary, and it will enhance your relationships. So if I can identify my needs, ask for them to be met, then we can move on to the next. But if I don't get my needs met, it's really hard to collaborate and work with each other. On the flip side, you'll be able to identify or ask somebody else, what is it that you need most right now? Provide it, and then move on. Be productive and thrive at new heights, which is my tagline. This is the competence and character growth path. The model Dr. Townsend developed is based on Luke chapter 13. Just want to provide you some context for the space that we are going to be staying in, which is how nutrient rich is your soil. And your soil represents your environment, your culture. You are being influenced and influencing others. So is it healthy? Do you have the right kinds of nutrients to move up to the roots, which are the elements of growth, grace, truth, and time, to move up the trunk to bear fruit? He calls those the 3 Ps. So my little mantra that I developed, nourish the root to bear the fruit. You want to say it? Because you guys already have so much gusto, Ready? 1, 2, 3. Nourish the root to bear the fruit. You'll never have that out of your mind the rest of the day. I'm curious, are you surviving or thriving? So we're going to do the little thumb vote. If you are thriving, thumbs up. If you are surviving, thumbs down. If you're on the fence, you're not sure, give a horizontal. All right, if you feel comfortable voting. All right, so we see a mixture of everything, and that's okay. And sometimes it depends on the day. And one of the things that we want to do, and this is where coaching can be helpful too, is to shift towards thriving. And what happens is that usually we have unforeseen possibilities that just need to be unleashed. So new ways of seeing, being, and behaving. And for me, when I was in the Townsend Institute, it was a transformational experience. I had these limiting beliefs and perspectives that were really holding me back. So performance identity, people pleaser, I'm just gonna, pull myself at the bootstraps, work harder. And the reality is I tried to do a lot by myself. And that didn't work out so well. One of the things, it can lead to burnout. And as someone that has completely burned out, I don't want anybody else to experiencing that. So if we look at our poll, the last question, I think I'm the only one that can see the results. Let's see where you're at. So we have a variety of comments. The biggest obstacle to being at your best when it comes to thriving in your vocation: patience, time, being an introvert, negative self-talk, insecurities, family balance, being assertive, exhaustion, distractions, anxiety, negative people, receiving, insecurity. Time is twice. And those are all valid and understandable. And when you feel and believe you are not alone, some of that weight is lifted off your shoulders. And so I just want to normalize that for you, that it happens. And it's not going away completely, because life is full of challenges. Oh, that's not what, I have my stopwatch instead of my clicker. All right. Perhaps all you see are the giants blocking your path. And what can happen is our response is superhero syndrome. We put on our capes and we don't take them off. And that's not effective because we are not God and we are not perfect. And so I'm curious, why do you think it's so hard for people, especially leaders, to ask for help? And what I'd like you to do is you're going to turn to a neighbor. Ready? Don't go yet. Or pause. Don't go yet. Turn to somebody next to you. You each have about a minute to share your answer. Ready, go. Wrap up the first person, second person, begin. once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. You guys got rhythm. All right. Who would like to share what gets in the way, either from your perspective or somebody that you were visiting with, that's an obstacle for asking for help?
Just false expectations that people put on you as a leader, that you're not supposed to need help, have it all together.
Have it all together, yep. Be strong. What else? Yes?
Fear that they're not going to do it the way you would do it or do it as well as you would do it.
Tell me more.
Maybe it's a project and you just can't get it done, and so you ask for help, but they might go at it at a different way. Like, for example, my husband doesn't load the dishwasher how I would load it. He gets it done.
Right, so are you actually spending more time because you are redoing what somebody else did? And that can be frustrating. One more.
I didn't put the negative self-talk answer, but I can relate to that from the earlier question. But so mine sometimes is guilt, like, I get paid to do this. You said volunteer or person I want to ask, you work a full-time job, you have a family, and you don't get paid to do this, and I feel guilty asking. I don't think about it as I'm giving you an opportunity to have joy in this. I don't think about that because it's not joy for me.
No, I get it. The fear of being a burden to others, feel guilty about, am I going to be too needy? We can kind of dismiss, suppress our needs, but the reality is we all have needs. And in ministry, especially, you're natural caregivers, nurturers. So I'm just going to give at a high level, and that's going to fuel me up. And it can, but the reality is we also need to receive at a high level. Recently, I heard Dr. Townsend speak, and I'm calling it the Townsend ratio, the 2-to-1. And it's receive from God, receive from others, give to others. So if you want to be at your best, if you want to be in that thriving space, that's the order for a reason. And God helps meet our needs in our vertical relationship with Him, yet that's not a space we can just stay in, because He also created us to be in community. It's the body of Christ, and so we need those horizontal relationships. And that's where sometimes we're like, okay, I got that vertical relationship with God, and I got that relationship with me, me, myself, and I. And what can happen, the negative self-talk, the inner judge, and the messages that we believe we take in, that's one of the giants. I call that the self-giant. I identified 5. So there's the first giant, the self. It comes from the inside out. We talk about team culture, building a healthy culture, but how's the culture inside of myself? And that's where you got to start, inside out. So great. So we're going to practice. You guys are so good at like shouting out and having gusto. On the count of 3, we're going to shout out, I have needs. This is going to be the loudest one. I have faith. All right? 1, 2, 3. I have needs. Huh. I feel like we should like break it down after that. We want to reframe asking for help from a position of strength. There's no shame. We got to normalize that. We got to flip what society tells us, what other people might tell us, and expand our perspectives, shift those limiting beliefs, and really receive the abundance God wants us to experience. With this, we need to find out different kinds of relationships that are going to benefit us and others. But first, I want you to think of yourself as David, running towards your giants, calling upon the Lord first, picking up some stones, and reaching out for others, to others for help. And so the last 2 pages of the handout describe my process, which is called the impact journey, and then the 5 giants that threaten leaders, teams, and organizations, and 5 stones, which are the rock-solid solutions. So if you have questions at any time, reach out to me afterwards or after the session. Happy to answer any questions that you have. What kind of relationships are healthy? Well, God is smart, so I came up with this acronym. It's also not a commercial for smart water, unless you like smart water. However, it is going to be for you to remember this recipe. So first, there needs to be safety in the relationship, where someone can be with you and for you, and you can be open and honest. And safety is key first. If we're vulnerable and open and honest to people that aren't safe people, that's where we can get hurt. And probably we've all been in that scenario. Mutual, the giving and receiving of fuel that everybody needs. And so ideally, there's going to be back and forth in these relationships that you establish your nutrient team, and it's an opportunity to encourage each other in your leadership and personal growth and development. Acceptance. This is number one of all the relational nutrients, because without acceptance, there is no relationship. It's very hard and difficult. At least it's not going to be any deep, meaningful type of relationship. So it's suspending judgment. Whenever we feel judged, it's really hard for us to be open and vulnerable. And so that is number one as a nutrient for a reason. And so with that acceptance, it also is for who we are, not just what we do. So there's the doing aspect of us that we're really comfortable with. And when I look at the poll, I'm sure that's going to reinforce my answer. And the being aspect, which COVID kind of forced us into, is uncomfortable because we want to fix things. We struggle with navigating the heart issues. As much as we are in ministry, it's uncomfortable, like the feelings, emotions, the mistakes, failures, setbacks. We are flawed humans. God has redeemed us. We have other people to support us. We're supporting others. And we just got to keep being intentional about how we do that, especially fueling ourselves up first. And real relationships, grounded in truth, okay, with wise decisions, accountability, responsibility, and then also being challenged in healthy ways and supportive ways in our relationships. And then trustworthy. And this is key for conflicts, disagreements, division. Words are spoken in love, given with grace, and allow time for growth. And again, those resonate or validate the elements of growth: grace, truth, and time. Let me check in with you and what we've shared and discussed thus far. What questions do you have? Yes?
Thinking back to those smart relationships.
Yep.
Are they all, are we looking for a single relationship, or is that would that be found maybe in I have a safe relationship and then I have separately mutual one? Are we looking for one relationship that covers all the bases, or can I try and draw on 5 people for these?
Sure, that's a great question. You are going to have different levels of relationships. The ideal giving and receiving relationship, the smart ones. You may not have a ton of them. It might be an inner circle. It might be where you're going to spend the time in quadrant 1 being reciprocal and being present for each other. Some people are just not in a space where they can be that or do that for you, and that's okay. It has more to be where they are at with their growth and development than being, oh, I'm too needy, I'm a burden. So in terms of finding where these relationships can exist, Dr. Townsend in his book identifies, I think there's 6 C's or 5 C's. What's a struggle in ministry is, how do you find safe people when you're a leader of all the people, right? And so you have to be very intentional for finding relationships also outside of your bubble. You could still have relationships with people wherever you're planted. It just might be at different levels. So there's no limits, and we're going to get to an exercise at the very end of how you can build your nutrient team. Does that help answer your question? I think so. Okay, so there's no limit. You're going to have different kinds of relationships. Your inner circle, more the quadrant one, is going to be with smart, life-giving relationships. Anyone else? What questions do you have? Don't make eye contact with the speaker. Don't worry, I'm not going to call upon you.
I just had a question, but more of a comment.
Sure.
I think too, when people are in ministry, we're often maybe mobile. We're moving to different, we might be at a church or location for a period of time, and then we move to another church or location for a period of time. And so I believe that takes time to develop. So I think sometimes it is even harder when you are in ministry because you might be more mobile. It's harder to cultivate that.
Yeah, absolutely, because these kinds of relationships take time. What's awesome, former classmates, Townsend Institute, and those I work with, we use this as a common language. And so literally we will refer and do the same exercise you're going to do later on, and it's just being intentional. So before this workshop and the days planning this workshop, I kept tweaking it, just perfectionist also. I reached out to people and asked for needs to be met. Like, I need encouragement. I need validation, all these things. My hope and desire is that you can at least take away something, and then you can be in a space where you believe you can thrive, and it's okay for you to receive. And so that's where my heart is for you. And yet I found myself hesitating, like, oh, do I want to bother my friends? And so it's just something you got to fight through. Be David, call upon the Lord, pick up some stones, and overcome those giants. So, yeah. So it's, being intentional, different ways to find different kinds of relationships. And maybe the relationships that are going to be in this space are going to be E-relationships, or creating a small group. And those might be E-relationships. But it's so vital, so vital. So I can help with that if you'd like more feedback, instructions, directions on how to do that. All right, so I'm not super artsy. This is my visual image to remember the 4 quadrants. I encourage you to come up with something. Maybe this resonates with you, but here's kind of how this flows. And you can refer to your front page of the relational nutrients. So this is a person, you, that has needs. And my hope and desire for you is to have courage and to be empowered to ask for your needs to be met in the smart, life-giving relationships and the other levels of relationships in your life. You are in a diamond because when you get your needs met, you shine. You are unique and precious, and we're created to thrive by God for the sake of serving others, as well as His purposes and for His glory. And so, quadrant 1, heart to heart. This is the space where leaders spend the least amount of time in both giving and receiving, and it's the most important. So when in doubt, go to quadrant 1. We need to be seen, heard, understood. Sometimes we don't need the advice. We don't need anybody to fix it. We just need somebody to be with us. And I'm going to dive deeper into that specific quadrant in a second. The second one, convey the good. We already did celebration. There are different things that we need to give and receive. And the first 2 quadrants are more high grace. Okay? The last 2 quadrants are more truth. And again, spoken in love, given with grace, allow time for growth. So we got reality, provide reality, and a call to action. That's the doing aspect. In this space, growth conversations, I don't call them difficult conversations because it already has who wants to go into a space where you're going to have a difficult conversation? Raise your hand. No. Oh, okay.
I'm weird, and I initiate.
Okay, so, all right, so tell me more of the definition of a difficult conversation for you.
A conversation that neither person wants to have, but really needs to be had.
Okay, and having the courage to have it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's important that we define terms because trust can mean something different for you than it can mean for for you as well. But the growth conversation piece is a win-win, and Dr. Townsend has identified 8 steps. And so it's just a matter of having a framework and also being with another person and for another person. So if you stay in that quadrant 1 space, you can call it a difficult conversation, and yet you can specifically say, hey, I'm for you, I'm with you, I want you to be successful, I appreciate you, validate the good that they do as well. So, yeah. All right, so quadrant 1, being present. Attunement is a skill, listening at a deep level. It's also being empathetic, and it's really tuning into the emotions of another person, okay? So the other person knows they have a heart-to-heart connection with you when they feel and understand that you get it. They're not alone anymore. They feel comforted, validated. Sometimes all they need is to vent and have somebody hold that space and not react. And when we can see that others can handle our high emotions, stress, challenges, it cuts the emotion in half. And we're able to then take that challenge back and move forward. And identification, this is usually quick, like no more than 60 seconds would you identify with someone else's situation. So maybe it's something where you've been in that similar experience and you just want to say, hey, you know what? That happens. You're not alone in that experience by yourself. And so I'm going to call on PJ, who also is my brother, and we are going to have a role play experience. And this is just to give you an idea of what being present looks like as a coach with someone who is pretending or role playing being a client. And these are the skills that I've been trained in, so these are not necessarily what you are going to be practicing in our role play activity. But here's what I want you to do, your role. Refer to the nutrient handout and see if you can identify the different kinds of relational nutrients I am offering PJ in our conversation. Sound good? Okay, we're going to stand so you can see us. He's super excited, as you can tell. Okay, can you see us? So ideally, we would be sitting down, face-to-face, open, body language, maintaining eye contact, and just creating a conversational space. All right, so here we go. Hey, we're knocking on the door. Okay.
Hi, Naomi.
Hi, PJ, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Okay. Just all right, huh?
I'm feeling kind of down, but I'm a guy, so I don't really talk about my emotions.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you for your vulnerability right out of the gate. And yeah, what's up with that?
Well, I just started a new job in Colorado. I really like it because it's really beautiful, but I guess it's kind of just sinking now that I just don't feel that connected, and I've been starting to have a lot of worries about, if I'm going to be good enough at my job, and if it was a good choice to move. So it's been a lot of kind of anxiety and made me feel down.
Wow. That's super hard. Moving to a new place, a lot of questions and doubt circling in your mind. And I can identify as I move to a number of new locations. And yeah, what would you really need from our time today?
Probably just some, I think, maybe comfort and encouragement, the hope that it's going to be okay, that things will get better, and reaching out, to someone else.
Well, I'm honored and grateful to be that person for you, that you have trusted me to just be open and honest and vulnerable, and I know that's not always easy. And so this is a a place, a relationship where we can continue to partner on that growth path and help you feel more connected, and you're not alone. And sometimes it can feel that way moving to a new location and just a lot of newness. And so that's when we need to connect with others the most, whether they're developing relationships in your new location or maintaining, deepening relationships outside. So, yeah, what's getting in the way for you to kind of reach out to others and establish some new relationships?
I think I just have some fear about, if it's worth the effort or if I'll be accepted, or, I'll just meet new people and just won't fit in, and, I'll be like things in the past. And so sometimes it feels easier to just, isolate.
And it sounds like that's really keeping you in a space of sadness and feeling down, and just, do you feel like you're at your best?
No.
Okay. So, yeah. And sometimes it's okay to laugh about it, like, oh yeah, this is not working for me, and we need to try some new things too. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, if I come and talk to you and, just try not to do it on my own.
Yeah, and that's a huge step. Huge step. Well, what's one thing that you could take action on to feel more connected, not alone, and get maybe that initial acceptance that you feel you need?
I did join a Facebook group. I mean, it's kind of other young adults. So they had like a game night. I guess I could go to that.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
And I know how much you love board games and card games, and so casual. I usually win, just side note, but anyways. I still want to build you up, no. Yeah, that could be a great first step to meet people and just kind of start that initial building a relationship. So, yeah. How committed do you feel about taking that step?
I guess I could do it. It's just one thing, so, it doesn't feel overwhelming or anything like that.
Okay. And just thinking about taking this step and reaching out, what emotions and feelings are showing up for you?
I do feel a little more hopeful, a little more positive. It's like a concrete plan, Something's achievable.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how we began our conversation and where you are at now, 10 being the highest, like super anxious, still down, maybe not as hopeful. Where are you now?
I don't know, 5.
Okay. And where were you when we began?
Maybe 7.
Okay. All right. So we've shifted a couple notches. Yeah. And so I just want to celebrate, just in a short conversation, the progress you've made, and to be able to share and be open and honest, that it takes a weight and burden off your shoulders, and to be able to reach out to somebody else is truly beneficial. And so I know you know the day and time when this game night is going to happen, and I'm curious, what did you learn about yourself in our conversation today?
I think things, that I just, I can't do it alone, and talking with you, it makes it easier to figure out a solution, and also helps my motivation to go and do it. So.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Well, I just want to give you affirmation for the courage to take this next step. And my hope and prayer for you is that it's a great positive experience where you feel accepted, and to be patient at the same time, where relationships do take time. So to kind of ground your expectations so they're not too high where you might feel disappointed, but it's just right, like the 3 Goldilocks questions. And, this experience might exceed your expectations. And so you are not alone. God is with you, and he's going to provide a community for you. And yet it sounds like you're motivated to take those next steps. So, well, I'll be excited to hear how this goes next time we have a conversation.
Thanks, Neil.
All right. Hi, Todd.
It's almost like we're family. We talk so
And for your hard labor, chocolate. So anyway, okay, so that's a little awkward and, but at least you got a little snippet. How was that experience for you, just observing and looking at some of the relational nutrients? Was it helpful? Okay. All right, so that's a snippet.
You moved through the quadrants,
Oh,
right?
that's high-level observation.
Counselor.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so starting in quadrant 1. And then not staying in that space. And the difference between counseling and coaching, we meet people where they're at and help them towards the future that they envision with God's help. And ultimately, he's the transformation catalyst and the person that does the amazing things, the impossible things. And I'm just an instrument, right? And it's yet so life-giving. And sometimes it's just clearing obstacles out of our path and then taking action so we don't stay in the space PJ was describing.
Could you define your understanding of the difference between counseling and coaching? I mean, I have heard it there. But
Yeah.
I want to make sure I hear what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and so with counseling, it's focused more on the past and healing. And that's not a space as a coach that I'm equipped and certified to stay in. Because I'm a graduate of the Townsend Institute, I'm trained in process skills and the attunement that you'll also experience with a counselor. But I focus on growth and development, leadership, personal, because we bring our whole selves everywhere we go, so we are not compartmentalized. And so part of what I do in a coaching engagement, we assess what the felt needs are and get underneath what the root issues and challenges are. We pick 2 goals, and then we have different experiences and activities that will help us internalize, rewire our brains, so that we can upgrade our operating system. So for example, I did not like conflict. Having difficult conversations or having conversations where emotions might have raised the roof was very scary. I mean, and some of it was very abusive, and that really, really affected my self-esteem and self-worth, and sometimes there's just not healthy relationships, especially in collegiate athletics. A lot of pressure, and that can be in many, many different spaces. And sometimes we just don't know how to handle our emotions or how to have conversations. And so I then needed to step into some safe places to practice, to be accepted, where now I can have growth conversations and stay in my prefrontal cortex and not get emotionally hijacked. So instead of being in a place of fear and freeze or flight, I can be present. I can be separate from somebody else's emotions. I don't have to take that all in, and yet be able to also recognize where somebody else is at, right? That's the least thing probably the least thing we want to do is care about another person if they're attacking us. But actually, that's the first step, again, to be in quadrant 1. So, all right. So just quickly, 30 seconds each, turn to the person next to you. How will giving and receiving relational nutrients impact your vocational and personal life? Go ahead. All right, God is good. God is good. All right. Here are just a few benefits when we give and receive relational nutrients. And so raise your hand if any of those sound good to you. Might be a good thing in your life, right? And the reason why he uses the term nutrients, just like you need vitamins and things daily, it's really that essential. And it does provide fuel. Oh, yeah, that's PJ. I also have this picture on the opening page on my website, and it's entitled Welcome. And so he's a mountain climber, and he's climbed all the 14s in Colorado, and I did ask for his permission, but actually I surprised you today with this. But so I don't owe him any royalty. He's family. Shoot, I shouldn't have mentioned that. All right, well, let's get to this giving and receiving relational nutrients. How does this work? So if you can turn to page 2 in your handout, halfway down, you see areas of focus if you're a giver, areas of focus if you're a receiver. And that was something PJ and I modeled. PJ was excellent in receiving the fuel that I was providing. Agree? Okay. And sometimes that can be really hard for us. We might want to devalue or divert. And then from a coaching perspective, it's about being curious about what's getting in the way for you. Maybe it's the inner judge. Maybe it's I feel guilty. You know, I don't know if I deserve it. I don't know if I believe it. And then working around that so eventually we can take in the good. And I listed the process on your handout as well as I will have it on the screen. And this is something we're just going to kind of take 2 minutes in a role play situation. One person's going to be the giver, one person's going to be the receiver. You're going to flip. And I'll give you more instructions, but I want to pause, and I'm going to ask for a victim, volunteer, to ask for a need to be met. Are there any brave souls out there? I promise it will be painless. Shh. So pick a relational nutrient. Again, it doesn't have to be high vulnerability or whatnot. But how could I fuel you up today? You have no needs. I see.
I'll be the
All right. All right. Come on up to the front. Yes. And please remind me of your name again. Melissa, yes. And we were travel partners. We got stranded in Minnesota and then Denver, and yeah. But here we are. All right. So it's going to begin with identifying a quadrant, then a specific nutrient in that quadrant. And it's literally going to be Naomi and asking me, can you give me a specific nutrient? So.
Naomi, can you give me encouragement?
Okay. Yeah. What's happening that you need encouragement today?
I think that I feel a little like discombobulated. I'm like in between careers and trying to kind of figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And maybe,
Aren't we all?
yes. And tend to go to that place of like, oh, you don't have any skills for X, Y, or Z, and you're too old to reinvent yourself, or who would want to hire you, you know, those types of things.
Oh, yeah. So the discouragement sounds like it's really coming from your inner judge and the messages that keep playing, and you're taking in as truth.
Yes.
Oh, man. That's a tough place to be, and totally normal to be discouraged. I want to encourage you today to speak into those messages that you hear. So if you're hearing, I'm not good enough, flipping the script. I am good enough. First, my identity is secure as a child of God, and He's giving me these gifts and abilities and a purpose. I may not know all the details yet, but I'm in a process, and I can trust Him to guide me and lead me. Were you able to take that in?
Yes, I think too is the trust in the process. Like, so often I want to get to the answer, and it's a journey. I have to remember that.
Yeah, and just to be encouraged to be patient and trust the process, and God knows what He's doing, and reaching out to for help from others too. So.
And it's okay that I don't know the answer.
Yes! Wow, look how far you're all coming. So, a round of applause. And you get candy.
Thank you.
And here's my ulterior motive with candy. If there was a struggle in this role play activity of receiving the good, my go-to was, well, would you like some candy? And how many of you would be like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want candy. Most of us like candy, right? And so if it's that easy for us to take in something good like candy, we can give ourselves permission to take in the good from others, right? And that needs to be genuine, authentic. And it may feel a little awkward when you practice, and that's okay. But just speak from your heart. And God will give you the words. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing. Say what's on your mind, what's on your heart. Okay? So on page 3, there is an assessment to work through after this first round. So you're going to partner up with someone. One person's going to be the giver. One person's going to be the receiver. You're going to go through these steps. And you're going to switch roles after 2 minutes. And then you're going to have some time to reflect and see kind of where you're at. So there's the good, the better, best. And before we start a second round, we're going to see if there's one thing we can do to up our game. How does that sound? Sound like a plan? What questions do you have? Feeling good about what we're doing? Okay, and no judgment, right? We're practicing, and that's okay. All right, so find a person who's going to be a giver first, and who's going to be a receiver first. Receiver, pick the relational nutrient you need, and then go through this process. Okay? And then we'll get started in a minute. 1 minute, so you can get prepared.
Is there any other free stuff?
Oh, okay. Do we have an odd number? That's always a tough thing with doing like partners. Okay. So who's asking first, and then who's going to give the nutrient? All right. If you have not started, first person up, receiver, go ahead, ask for your need to be met. And if you don't know the other person's name, ask their name first. All right, timeout. There goes the basketball coach. Timeout, timeout, timeout. All right. Whether or not you're finished, we're going to move on. You're going to switch roles. So if you were the giver, now you're the receiver asking for your need to be met. You have another 2 minutes. Ready, go. All right, lower your volume. And we're back together. That was such a teacher thing, like, yeah. All right, now you're going to take a couple minutes and assess the experience, both as a giver and a receiver, kind of to see where you're at. No judgment. All right, go ahead.
You say that again, I was still talking.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I was
Okay, so did you do both roles? Yes. Okay, so now on this page, you're going to assess yourself both as a giver and receiver. What was that experience like for you?
Okay.
So, yep. So are you good with page 3? Okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. God is good. God is good. All right. So this is just a brief check-in. Who would like to share what worked well in this role-playing experience? Yes, Pam. Okay.
Yeah, try to choose what do I need? And then the words, the language, just that.
Yeah, as a reference. Yeah. Because sometimes it's hard to know what do I need, and even having somebody to help us identify what we might need. If we don't know, we don't know, and it's hard to get what we don't know what we need, right? So, excellent. Anybody else? Okay, so that resonates with you. And sometimes it's just a place to process feelings, and the other person is giving them the relational nutrient of containment, right? And quadrant 1, less words, more being present. And when we are present with someone, just kind of in the space and place they're at, they don't feel alone, they feel heard. And sometimes just getting it out then creates the space to get into the prefrontal cortex and figure out, oh, now I know why I'm feeling this way, or oh, now I have an idea of what I want to do. So yeah, the great example here from Mark, moving through all 4 quadrants. Yeah. So, what else worked well for you? Yeah.
Slowing down and not being just so pragmatic about a process. And I'm talking as the giver.
Okay.
But really stopping and listening and validating and absorbing. And that only happens if you slow down.
Yeah, we may not think we have the time. We do have the time because we're just not going to be as productive and connected if we just try to push through it and ignore it or not acknowledge it. And one thing with validation that I didn't mention before, you can validate someone's experience and emotions and you're not agreeing with them. Sometimes that's the hesitancy. I don't want to validate someone's experience because then it means I'm agreeing with their truth. But one's reality is their perception. And we only have a snippet of reality. And sometimes with like coaching and working together, it's co-creating reality because I might see something from my schema's giant, which means I don't see the whole picture. And I've made up my mind with assumptions, bias, what have you, judgment, that I might be missing the mark. But if I can co-create the reality, like what do you see, what are you experiencing, then we can put pieces together. All right. Well, what's one thing you or your partner would like to do to improve in this next round? Whoa, there's another round. Oh, look, we still have time.
See, when it's really happening, you have the Holy Spirit with you, and that guides you. So, like right now, it's like.
Yeah, and it's a little like, hey, you're going to give and receive relational nutrients, this role play activity, with another person you may or may not know in this space right now. And so it just takes practice. It's organic in the relationships you have. And now you have a menu, a reference, you have a process where you can go to those people you feel are safe and the smart and be in the quadrant 1 and help each other, right? And then, oh my goodness, the sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. All right. Anybody like to share what's one thing you'd like to improve on this next round? You have mastered the art. Maybe it's hard to know. So take a quick look at that third page, the self-assessment. Maybe it was eye contact, and you want to stay engaged with their eyes. Maybe it's the receiver just giving yourself more permission to be open and to really receive, like you're digesting what they're saying. So take a moment, see if there's something you can identify, and we're going to do another round. Do we feel ready? Thumbs up or question?
Oh, I was just gonna comment about when you said like when you're the giver and being present, the identification piece should be very quick. I think sometimes I might sit in that too much.
Yeah, and that's very common because we think we might be helping if we share our own experience and then we just kind of take over. And so Dr. Townsend's rule of thumb is no longer than 60 seconds. Because then you can come back and be there for the person. Yeah. And you might not exactly identify with their situation, and that's okay. You do not need to meet all the nutrients in quadrant 1 to be effective in being present. What comes up? Yeah. All right. So, again, another round. If you were the first person in the giver role, you're the first person in the giver role this time. You're going to pick a different relational nutrient. And we're going to have the first person up. And we're adding more fuel to the party. All right, go ahead. 2 minutes. You have 22 to choose from, so. All right. Substitution, tweet, substitution. Switch roles. Give yourselves a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, we're going to bring it back together. I'm going to provide more relational nutrients for you. I want to affirm your willingness, courage, to engage and try something new. And I tried to walk around to kind of eavesdrop, and all I heard was just noise. So if you're wondering, like, why I kind of just hung out here, because I'm like, okay, you guys are engaged. I don't need to interrupt, and felt like you guys are right on track and humming along. And I'm curious, who would like to share how they improved, whether it was a giver or receiver, this round?
I think the more
Sir.
you do it, the easier it is to ask clarifying questions.
Yeah. True statement.
Trying to do it unapologetically, not feeling bad about asking for a need.
Yeah. That's a big hurdle. Yeah. All right. Oh, was there one more? Yeah.
I just have a comment. I think
Sure.
When I was filling out the survey,
Uh-huh.
I thought I was a better giver than receiver, but after doing this, I think I'm a much better receiver than giver.
Ooh. Wow. That's an aha moment. That's a good thing. That's a good thing, definitely. And you can be a master at both. So you don't have to be one or the other. Naturally, we are inclined to be in the giver space, which reminds me to look at our poll. And total nutrients given daily to others, the highest total was being in a space between 10 to 15. That's impressive. Total nutrients received daily from others were a little bit less, but definitely the majority was in the 5 to 9 range. So again, we need to be receiving more. The quadrant that I received the most daily nutrients from is, dun, 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 convey the good with being present second. Wow, you guys are rock stars. Sometimes it can be the call to action. That's the leading one because we just stay in the tasks and the doing. And again, you're skilled in the being present space. And this was a receiving poll question. And we're celebrating a lot of what's good. And the quadrant I give the most relational, this again, because of your skill set and gifts, not surprised, being present. My challenge is for you to think about how you can take that to a new level. And my hope and desire is this process and the 22 nutrients can help you with that. And if you're wondering if you're going to have some homework, you are. I'm previously an educator or educator at heart. And I did it again. I took my stopwatch. It's so strange. I've never done that before. Okay. Thank you for accepting me without judgment. All right. One more thing I want to highlight too. You are giving and receiving in the moment, but later on you can draw upon that experience and use it as fuel. And so sometimes we have these tapes being played in our head that don't serve us well. Draw these to your DJ soundtrack and refer back to them because it's still fuel that's stored. So access the good. All right, so how are you going to recall these relational nutrients and quadrants? I have the answer for you. So on the back of page 2, you're going to kind of see what you see on the screen. And this is where you're going to identify who could be part of your nutrient team. So the first question is about who you could ask to meet one of your needs. And then you're going to take time on your own to do this. I call it growth work because homework is kind of like, maybe seems like painful process. But think of people you already have relationships with, at least one in each quadrant. Okay, so for example, I know if I need containment, I can reach out to my friend Ashley and I can vent and she will be able to handle my intensity of emotions or being able just to vomit everything, and then she's going to be able to give me some encouragement or whatever the next thing is that I need. I know my go-to, Ashley. So who could be part of your go-to team? The next one, who could you provide a relational nutrient for? So if I have a friend, let's say Britta, who is really confused, she feels stuck, just doesn't know which way to turn, I can provide clarification to her so she can figure out what the path is for a next step. So you're going to do both. And then you already have 8 people part of your nutrient team and both giving and receiving. How about that? How about them apples? Huh? Sound pretty good? All right. Well, are there any questions before we wrap up our session today? Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, my business cards are on the music stand where you picked up your handout. It's just outside the door since it was hard to identify where this room was. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. And again, you get to receive a free complimentary coaching session. And definitely know it might be a little different. It's kind of hard doing it with your brother, who's amazing and everything. And just so you know, it's a space where it's all about you, which is great about coaching. It feels weird at first when you're like, wait, what? Like, I want to give you something. Nope, it's all about you. And sometimes it's hard to find that space where somebody can just help you and be part of that growth and development. So you're not on your way yet. I want you to do a pair share one last time. What's your one takeaway and what's your next action step? So I want you to take action on something. Otherwise, knowledge minus action equals nothing. I don't want you to come out of this with nothing. I don't think you will, but so important, especially in the next 24 hours. Maybe you're going to reach out to someone and say, hey, I just learned this fantastic thing, this process about giving and receiving relational nutrients. You want to be on my team? And here, I'll teach you the process, and this will be fun. All right? And one thing as a coach, this is what we do, we notice and we observe. The energy level, your smiles, your posture, on all these different things are very different from when you came in. Does that resonate with you? Do you feel uplifted, fueled up, energized? Engagement is part of that process too. So just take a couple minutes, share your answers to these questions, and from a neuroscience perspective, this ties a bowl. Just like I asked PJ, what will you take away? What did you learn about yourself? We want to close the loop. All right, go ahead. Pair share. One last time. God is good. All right. So, parting thoughts. You are not alone. God and others can help meet your needs. Here, more contact information if you want to take a screenshot, pick up a business card. And if you feel comfortable, I'm all about high fives. The sign of a great high five is that it doesn't stop. Like if Melissa and I gave a high five, it doesn't stop with us. She wants to give somebody else a high five, okay? So if you feel comfortable, I'm going to give you a high five on the way out. If you want to talk to me afterwards or another time, just feel free to reach out. I thank you so much. You guys are awesome in terms of your participation and engagement. Enjoy the rest of the time at BPM.